There's this thing that basketball fans, well, not just basketball fans, but sports fans in general say, and it's that you don't really notice a player's physical decline as the years go by. It's only when you randomly come across some really old clips and compare it to the way they move now that you're just like, damn, they really are getting pretty fucking old. I recently went through this phenomenon with KD because on paper, you really don't notice the decline, which is impressive as fuck because he literally missed a whole year with that nasty Achilles injury he suffered at like 30 years old. Logically, you'd think there'd be a dip in his stats, but there just wasn't. He was still hooping. I was high as hell watching old compilations from the Thunder days the other night, though, and man, he used to be quick as shit. Same for the Warrior days. What that Achilles injury did to him was nasty. His points per game never fell off and actually ticked up slightly, so I guess it's easier for a lot of people to brush off the severity of that injury, but he very clearly lost a step. Nowadays, his game is more polished and he relies much less on his athleticism, which has allowed him to maintain his numbers. Pre-Achilles KD was much more explosive, but more recent KD to me is simply a more skilled all-around scorer. It's funny because despite the fact that KD is 36 years old, has been around for 17 years and shrugged off one of the most devastating injuries an athlete could have, his longevity doesn't get talked about nearly as much as it should. Why? Because of this guy, LeBron James. Currently playing his 22nd season of his career. Playing 17 seasons is cool and all, but obviously nobody's really going to talk about it as much when somebody's still dominating who's been here since Bush's first term. It's become something of a trend in KD's career. Not just with LeBron, but with certain other players too. Mostly LeBron though. Coming out of high school, KD was ranked second in his class behind Greg Oden. Then in the 2007 draft, he was drafted second behind Greg Oden. As he grew into a superstar, it began to look like he was destined to become the best player in the league one day, but that day kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. Why? Well, LeBron just wouldn't go away. The Heat beating the Thunder in 5 games back in 2012 was just the beginning of LeBron making KD an afterthought. Even after he won his MVP in the 2013-14 season, he was still generally viewed as second best in the league behind Bron, mainly because he'd already finished second place in 3 different MVP races too. Yeah, LeBron. KD even openly talked about it once. He's never been one to really hide his feelings. Back in like 2013 or so, he talked about his frustration will always be a second. Unfortunately, that frustration would only get worse as his career continued. He ended up getting his rings by famously moving to the Warriors, but the Warriors had already won one before him, and he joined them after they beat him in 2016. No matter how many finals MVPs he won with them, he was always going to be viewed as the Golden State side piece. He hopped on the train after it left the station and then hopped off before it reached its last stop. Curry won before him. Curry won after him, but KD never won without Curry. Even KD's impact on the game has been kind of brushed aside. Whenever people talk about most influential basketball players of this generation, the number one name is always Curry, rightfully so. What he did with the three-point shot obviously has been talked about nonstop since those years where Golden State ruled the world, and he's always cited as the forefather of modern basketball. KD's name is rarely ever brought up, though, despite birthing a whole new archetype of NBA player. Or maybe not really birthing, but more like paving the way for it to become more of the norm. I don't know. Not to say that there's a bunch of players his size that are as good as KD, but there's more players near his height that play like him because of him. Before KD, it was much more rare for players around that height to be wing players that could shoot and handle the ball with that level of smoothness. You had your tall guys like T-Mac littered around here or there, but it wasn't as common. After him, how many have we seen? Ingram was supposed to be the next KD for a while. Tatum came along and developed into one of the best forwards in the league. Michael Porter Jr. is another one. Now we got 7'4" Wemby doing hezzy crosses and hitting step-back threes. Imani Bates was getting gas for a while. He never really ended up working out, though. I just thought of him because he was getting that, next KD hype back in high school. Yet it's not talked about as much because he simply didn't have as much of a widespread impact as Curry, and that's the fact of the matter. In almost every conceivable way, KD has been the, oh yeah, that guy's there too, throughout his career. Even the fact that he came straight into the league averaging 20 as a teenager was less impressive because guess who? LeBron was the first one to do it just 4 years before. And Melo too in the same year, but I'm really trying to build this whole LeBron villain thing up, so let me rock. It's insane how unlucky he was to be born in the same generation as Bron, because what his resume would look like if Bron just wasn't there is insane. His MVPs jumped from 1 to 4. He hypothetically wins a championship at 23 years old. He's the undisputed best player in the world for, honestly, probably half a decade straight before Curry arrives to be his real competition. It almost makes you feel bad for him sometimes, and if you said that to his face, he'd probably tell you he doesn't give a shit, and maybe he doesn't. I feel like KD has reached a point in his career where people have been yelling in his ear for so many years that he genuinely just doesn't give a damn anymore. But the fact of the matter is, the way his career is perceived is wildly unfortunate for a player of his talent level. They say no one remembers second place. To use that in this scenario will be a bit of a stretch. KD will be remembered. The problem is, it's second place that he will be remembered for. Me personally, I'm a guy that's just never been able to develop the deep hatred for KD that so many people did after the Golden State move. I just couldn't. He was my second favorite player in the league for most of my childhood. Number one was always Melo first after he came to New York. There's plenty of people that are going to remember him for being arguably the most lethal scorer the league has ever seen. There's also plenty of people that are going to remember him for being the guy that took the easy way out. There's plenty of people that view him as insecure, maybe a little bit touchy and sensitive. I think he's just a guy that likes basketball. He's going to be in the league for a few more seasons too. He's too pure of a scorer with too much love for the game to just fall off and retire soon when he can keep shooting right over people when his knees turn into jelly. His legacy is going to remain a pretty big question mark though, especially with the way so many basketball fans view him. Whether he's done enough to be in top 10 conversations is a whole nother story. Missing a season and a half of his prime created this hole in his career that he's been trying to fill since leaving Golden State, and it's just not been working out the most ideally. At the end of the day though, he's Kevin Durant. Y'all know who he is, or whatever he said in that interview. He won't ever be truly forgotten like a lot of other serial runner-ups, and that might be enough for him.